Earlier, when Sue asked the question about to Jack, what celebrities do you know? My answer would have been the individuals on this next panel. I'm just saying we have a star-studded panel coming up here to talk about the controversial topic, the big T, the technical foul. What's happening in the industry? There are bad players, and we know it. We have the data. Who has the whistle, you or the industry? And there are rules. And so when it comes to this technical foul behavior, and that's unbecoming of the industry, there's really no debate here when everybody's coming up. We're just going to talk about who, when, what is being done by CUSOs and partners. So I'd like to bring up for our panel first Jonathan Taylor, the CEO of CUSO. We have Linda White, the Executive Director of the Credit Union Women's Leadership Alliance. Next, we have Sarah Kaneepa Bang, the Senior Advisor to the Vice Chair, Kyle Hopman at NCUA. And Dr. Brian Branch, retired CEO of the World Council of Credit Unions. So you guys aren't necessarily debating here, but don't go easy on each other either. Jonathan, will you start us up?
I will. Well, good morning, everybody. I was just about to use the restroom because I thought we were on last, so I'm really happy that didn't happen. And Brian was at the door to kind of stop me, so thank you for that, Brian. My name is Jonathan Taylor. I am the CEO of CUSO. Our tagline is Solutions with Soul, doing well while doing good. And the crown jewel in that initiative, and I'm not texting anybody, I'm just keeping an eye, because like Becky, I also go off the rails, ask anybody who knows me, so I've got my points here. But the crown jewel in that is a program called CU Safe. This is the heavier part of the show, I would say, folks, but I think it really speaks to the why, the importance of what we do each and every day. So I'm a Maine boy. I actually am from Winslow, Maine, which is the town right next to Vassarboro, Maine, where Brian is from, which is a small world indeed. And when I took this job 2 years ago, I took it for one major reason, which was because of this program, CU Safe. So starting out today, I wanted to do a little bit of an exercise. And this is going to be a little bit painful for folks, but bear with me because I think it's important to talk about. So please put a hand up if either you are a survivor of domestic violence or you love someone who is. Please put your hand up if you are a survivor of domestic violence or love somebody who is. Now take a look around at how many people in this room just put their hand up. Okay, that is just in what's in this room. Now think about your membership. Think about your employees. Think about your community. And also think about the fact that we just went through a very difficult time in a pandemic where people were not nice to each other. And also think about what's the number one stressor for relationships. It's money, right? So at CU Safe, that's an acronym, Survivor Advocacy for Financial Empowerment. That's a program that was founded in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That was the reason why I said yes to this job. And basically it's two credit unions, US Eagle and Rio Grande, that came together and said we need to do something for our community because this is a real problem in that community. But of course, it's a real problem everywhere. When I had the honor of taking over as the CEO, I looked at this program. Candidly, it was in shambles. It was just stuck. And the reason why it was stuck was because of the overwhelming amount of people that needed help. These domestic violence resource centers are overworked, underpaid, understaffed brutally. I mean, imagine every single day working with these folks that need help. We have 3 very talented women in the Albuquerque Domestic Violence Resource Center. Guess how many cases they processed last year? 3 women. 18,000 cases. 18,000. Break that down by hour. I haven't done the math, but that's really, really difficult. And the 2 ways that folks typically reach out are phone call and walk-ins. Okay, so one of the issues we ran into was that we had a bottleneck because we just couldn't get folks over to the credit union. And the whole point is to provide what we call a safe path between domestic violence resource centers and credit unions to be able to do what we do best, right? Which is help folks when it comes to money, when it comes to a new PFI, because those accounts need to be separated, the money needs to be separated. Lending, regardless of credit, because they need a hand up. That was part of why I did the hand up, by the way. Not a hand out for domestic violence. And also to provide counseling of a different kind, credit counseling. Credit is abused right along with the individual in order to control. So how can we help those people whose credit has been destroyed on purpose to control an individual? So it was slow going when we started, when I came in, and the folks did an admirable job of getting it up, but we just didn't know what we didn't know. And so today we have a wonderful program with a lot of work from both the credit unions, the domestic violence resource centers, but we recognized early on that we needed technology. And it's funny, as I looked down the list of all of the different topics, I thought, this resonates with us in every single thing we do. Profit is not a bad word. We have to do well while doing good, or we can't continue to do good, right, if we don't do well. Just the fact that we need emotional intelligence mixed with technology, so our saying at CUSO is we need to take technology and empathy and combine them into tempathy. And there's my time. So we have FinTech partners in the room today. Gary from Members Mobile, who's donating SIM cards into the program so that survivors can jailbreak their phones and start to make the calls and texts that they need to, and lots of others. So I would just say, please raise your hand for your communities and take a stand in this fight, because it's really needed. And think of the loyalty that's created from these people that you can help get a better life. And I just want to give a shout out to Olivia, who is our survivor advocate in the program, who came here today. So thank you very much.
Wow, just wow. When we were talking about this, I just wanted to kind of tag on to that real quick. How many of you remember when women couldn't apply for loans without their spouse? Right? Right? And so there's a lot. We've come a long way, baby. So I actually have had the opportunity, and Sue Mitchell, Noodles in the Wall, we'll talk about that later. That's an inside joke. I've had the opportunity to be on the forefront of a couple of organizations. One with Sue's support and pushing was the Global Women's Leadership Network. Having been a co-leader of the first sister society, and that was back in, I think, was it 2012? And now, I don't even know how many we have now. It's over 200 worldwide, to see that grow and to see what we can do to help the impact of women, not just locally, but internationally. And just like not knowing, and women in other countries, the things that they cannot do and how we help them. The other thing that I'm able to be a part of is to be a founding member and now the executive director of the Credit Union Women's Leadership Alliance, CULA. So you'll hear the acronym CULA a lot. And that's for female CEOs of credit unions under 300 million in assets. So we kind of answer the E and the DEI part of the spectrum. Because when you think about women that JT's talking about, what about if they're running credit unions? Or what is that circle or that conversation look like for women that are running smaller credit unions? We're not here to male bash it. Is absolutely not. We never even talk about it. But the conversations are certainly much different. And when you take into consideration that we have women from all over the country that are members and rapidly growing, to hear what they're dealing with in their organizations, it's so enlightening, and I'm humbled to be the first executive director. Because we were founded amidst the pandemic. We launched in 2020, and we now have 160 members, and we have over 2,000 members that are eligible, CEOs in the country that are eligible to join our organization. And when we hear the heartfelt conversations that we share in our monthly meetings, you would be amazed at what comes from some of these women. So we're here to help sustainability of small credit unions in the ecosystem, because we know the majority, and Sarah's got this data, I'm sure, about how many small credit unions are in the country. Most of the credit unions in this country are small, and then most of them are run by women. Women have also paved the way to make those jobs look attractive when they did the grunt work, but now they've become more attractive. So that percentage is leveling out. Because I have a lot of male counterparts when I was a CEO that I rely on, but yet the conversation is different. It definitely is. I have a brother from another mother that I always say if he was in the room, the conversation would go so different. We're here to support, uplift, and really when we were talking, it's like I can't wait to hear what we can do with CUSO. And I'm here at the CUSO conference because I've been investigating some of the CUSOs and what can we do for our organization, because we are smaller credit unions. How do we collectively band together to present something? So I'm actually trying to break the mold of one of the CUSOs, and I can't wait to talk to the founder because I can see how it can help all of our small credit union communities with the nonprofits in their area.
And you're right, 3,600 credit unions are under, is it 250 million in assets. So that's not a niche. That's the movement, so a lot of smaller credit unions. Well, I'm going to take just a little bit of a different tact. Oh, but first, Brian Branch deserves a lot of credit for the Global Women's Leadership Network. He was, no one else was talking about it, and I remember going to lunch and Brian saying, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I won't join it if it bashes men, because I like men." And he's like, "Okay, we won't bash men." But and then bringing Sue on was just brilliant. So thank you for that. Yeah. So anyway, I'm taking this approach. This is Sarah Bang, 40 years in credit union. So I was here when the interest rates were different. You do the math. But something that we saw with SVB, I got a phone call this last weekend from somebody who said, "Oh, weren't there regulations in place to prevent this from happening?" And blah, blah, blah. And my first reaction was, gee whiz, do you need a regulation or a law to tell you not to put your hand in a fire? I said, a lot of these mistakes are just, if somebody took a step back and said, okay, we need to use financial accounting 101 here, and we wouldn't make these mistakes. Actually, a better example of that, 3,600 credit unions have always been smaller, which means that they have always had to innovate to get the services that other folks did. And when you innovate, you are taking risks, and sometimes you're doing things that nobody else has ever done. Oh, I don't know, shared branches, or share ATMs, or, all kinds of things that, others wouldn't dream of doing. We have to do, or our members don't get that service. But my favorite quote is from St. Augustine. So this is St. Augustine saying it, not Sarah Bang, not the NCUA. But if you are loving and diligent, you may do whatever you wish. If you are loving and diligent, you may do whatever you wish. St. Augustine. And so when I see credit unions innovating, we know that their hearts are usually in the right place, bringing services, but we also look for things like, are they diligent? And Becky Reed is just, a perfect example of that. When I was with the Shared Branch Network, my deal was, I don't look good in orange. Whatever we do, we cannot lose money and get into trouble, because I'm not going to wear orange in prison. And let me... Yeah, I know, it's just not a good color. And it comes down to stupid mistakes. And my favorite, I told somebody this story, Denise, this story last night. I'm going to tell it in two bits here. My brother-in-law loves to come to Vegas. He never comes to our home in Wisconsin. He always comes to Vegas. But my brother-in-law comes, and I have these set of glasses that are just really hard to replace. And they were in the dishwasher. My bad. I put them in the dishwasher. And he opened up the dishwasher. It was on dry, and the glass was hot, right? And so he picked it up. Ooh, 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 hot. And what did he do? No. He actually is not any smarter than a fifth grader. He took that glass and he ran it under cold water. Oh. Right? So, all right, are you smarter than a fifth grader? All right, so, all right, this is a good story and to tell about, that's a simple mistake. It broke my favorite glass. Here's a better story on this. Does everybody remember, those of you who were born, in 1986, January 28th, the Challenger explosion? Do you remember that? Do you remember what caused that? The O-rings. Do you know how they explained it? Richard Feynman, absolutely friggin' brilliant man. It was again, are you smarter than a fifth grader? He took a glass of ice, put the O-rings in the glass of ice because it was cold that night, right, before it went up. He basically froze the O-rings, and then he cooled them, or how did that go? He heated them up, and then he put them in the glass of ice, and they broke. And it was like, guys, this is a fifth grader could have told you that this was going to happen. So how does a NASA make that mistake that kills people, that destroys, how do they make that mistake? And I will say this, that, okay, I'm watching my time here, that it's somebody in NASA knew, somebody had to know, that we had weather changes in Florida. Somebody had to know, and somebody didn't say something, or they did and they were ignored. And the measure of a good management team isn't that they don't make mistakes. In fact, I would argue that good management does make mistakes because you fail forward, right? The measure of good management is how quickly you recover, but a failure of management is when there's somebody in your organization who said, well, I could have told you that wasn't going to work. And the absolute failure of management is when I tried to tell them, but they wouldn't listen to me. And so, as credit unions are innovating, I guess it's called an unforced error in tennis. Don't shoot your own foot off. And a lot of times it's simple stuff, and you'd be surprised at who in your organization might have some insight, and you need to pay attention to it. But oh my gosh, if you have people in your organization who said, I tried to tell someone, first off, kudos to that person, but secondly, somebody else needs to lose their job for not listening. And that's Sarah Bang, not NCUA. But I'm going to just quickly close with this. NCUA does not want to write more regulations. There's a lot of people there, and they're very busy trying to clarify existing regulations. So don't do an unforced error on yourself. Do what credit unions like Becky's is doing, and that is think it through and make sure that you're managing the risk not only to your organization but to the membership. And then talk to as many people as you can to make sure that you didn't take aim at your own foot. And then you won't need a regulation that says don't stick your hand in fire. Okay? So that's it for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I retired from the World Council in late 2021, And then in February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. And these were folks that I had worked with since the late 1980s, and so I was very much in touch with the Ukrainians, the Poles, about what was happening. And there were millions of Ukrainian refugees that came across the border into Poland. And the Poles embraced these refugees in large numbers. And the Polish credit union said, well, can you come over and can we sit down? Can we work out a strategy here to deal with this? Because for them, this was very personal. This was part of their history. This was right next door. Stalin had shifted those borders westward. And so many of the people from Ukraine lived in parts of the region that used to be part of Poland. And there was a short debate. These are refugees. They arrive here, they're not Poles. They're not part of our community. So you can't measure that risk. We can't serve these people. They're poor. They arrived with little or nothing. And some came with wads of Ukrainian currency, which within a week was worthless. And they didn't have assets. So, sorry, Sarah. Regulator didn't want them to deal with these refugees. They're mobile, they move around, they don't have a residency history, they don't have assets, they're not a good risk, they're not going to have any collateral. Well, the other financial institutions didn't want to deal with the refugees either. And they became subject to a lot of predatory behavior. Well, when the Polish credit union sat down and talked about it, they said, you know, we're engaged with all parts of our community. We're engaged with the municipal, with the clubs, with people that take the refugees into our homes, and we're getting to know these people. These are people that want to work. They want a chance. And the Poles have this tremendous shared history, a sense of emergence from the old Soviet Union, a sense of kinship and family ties that go back for hundreds of years. Well, transaction income, if we serve them, is going to be minimal. And membership, we'll have an increase in membership. Some of these refugees are going to stay here in our communities, but some are going to go back to Ukraine. That's why they're here in Poland, so they can go home at some point. And we have aspirations that Ukraine will join the European Union, and we're going to have this pan-European ability to do financial services across borders. But the bottom line really is, this is about our community. And these are people that our community has embraced to provide them with services and help them integrate, help them become members of the community. And so credit unions made a very strong commitment to invite the Ukrainian refugees to become members in the credit union, because what they're trying to do is not just help the refugees, they're trying to help stabilize and support their communities. Because as these people integrate, they get jobs, they become part of the community, then they minimize this threat, this concern about overwhelming the community with people from outside and giving them a prosperous path forward. John, you talked about the safe path. How ironic that on the other side of the world, in Poland, when the Polish credit unions talked about this and how to integrate these refugees, they talked about the pathway to safety, which became their foundation to lead this effort, integrating all the credit unions in Poland with the Via Stella. For them, that was the pathway to safety, to protect these refugees, integrate them, and protect their communities. Part that we have in common. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Let's give the panel one more round of applause. Thank you very much. Yes, you guys shared your stories, and yeah, we're going to have to ask questions in the networking break. Thank you very much. Let's give them again a warm welcome and thank you.